They're not answering the question goes back to something else I have brought up on this channel, which is the inability of narcissistic people to answer any question that begins with why. They don't know their why. Narcissistic people are notoriously disconnected from their motivations. The bird test, if you watch TikTok or on social media, you've probably heard of it. It refers to the basic premise that if you are looking out and about or looking out the window and tell your partner something about like, what a lovely bird that you see out the window or in a tree or on a walk together, and that you're supposed to pay attention to their reaction. Do they stop to notice the bird that you pointed out to and even share in the observation or the admiration of it? Or do they ignore you and just keep doing whatever it is that they're doing? It's nothing specific about the bird. It's just the ordinariness of seeing something like a bird, like any ordinary thing you might point out to a partner. It's really a metaphor for whether your partner will attend to you when you're pointing something out to them, especially something ordinary, and attempting to engage them. Now, some of you may be familiar with Gottman's model of working with couples. And in Gottman's model, this is sort of called a bid, right? An attempt to engage a partner. And when you do this bid, does the partner engage with you, engage with your bid, and turn toward you and engage with you, even about something as low stakes as a pretty bird? And Gottman's research apparently finds that happy couples will engage with the bids from their partner, while this happens less so in the couples who go on to break up. So, just like all things narcissistic, there's what happens in happy, or healthy, I should say, really, healthy, normal, or even healthy-ish relationships, and there is what happens in narcissistic relationships. So again, drop it in the comments if you haven't. What's your guess? What would a narcissistic person do, your partner do, if you bird tested them? The answer may not be as simple as you think. I really believe that with a narcissist, it's going to come down to where you are in the relationship arc with them. If it's the beginning of the relationship and you are acutely in the love-bombed phase, they may actually make the effort to engage with your bird pointing out behavior. Narcissistic folks can engage in good, engaged behavior for short sprints, enough to win you over or earn your trust, or to show you what a great partner they are in front of other people. So if you were to do, for example, this bird test when there are other people around whose opinion matters, especially opinion about things like relationships, or if you're in the love bombing phase, there is a chance that they may be willing to notice that bird. But otherwise, hell no. When I first read about the bird test, I sort of ruefully smiled when I thought about what would happen if you did try the bird test with a narcissistic partner, if you made that bid, as it were, if you tried to pull them away from their work or a TV show or them fooling around or their phone or doing anything at all whatsoever, and told them to come, hey babe, oh my gosh, there's such a beautiful bird out the window, I want you to see it. My guess is the most common reactions would be contempt. Are you serious? Do you think I have time like you to sit around and stare out the damned window at some stupid bird? You might get neglect, like, huh, what? Or something like, I don't have time for that. You might get dismissiveness, them saying, okay, and then walking away. You might get mockery. What are you, 6? You care about some stupid bird? Or complete and utter not seeing you, not even looking up or responding to you when you talk to them. To the degree that the bird test is an index of a healthy relationship, it doesn't seem that most narcissistic relationships would pass. And this test, as it were, gets at a core dynamic of narcissistic relationships. They will not turn towards you most of the time when you make a so-called bid, unless they want to do it performatively to show other people what an attentive partner they are, or if they're trying to win you over or try to hoover you back after an argument or a breakup. If they need you, they will turn towards you, But that's not really turning towards you. That's attending to something or someone only when they need something. For narcissistic people, relationships are at best conveniences or tools, and the people in the relationships are objects, there to serve some sort of function, largely to provide narcissistic supply. It might mean that you have to listen to them or do things for them, but there's no turning towards that object unless they need something from it. Listen, the bird test is a fun, viral internet moment. It's a reminder that narcissistic relationships lack something that is crucial to the health and well-being of a relationship, which is to be attuned to a partner, to respond when they ask you to, whether for something big like a heavy conversation or an emergency, or even something as small like looking at a perfect little hummingbird outside the window. It doesn't have to be a bird. You might be trying to turn their attention to snowflakes, autumn leaves, flowers in the garden, shells on the beach. Because the real health of a relationship is found in the ordinary moments. And most of a relationship is the ordinary moments. And then the willingness of a partner to turn towards someone who is supposed to be the most important or one of the most important people in their life. They should be willing to turn towards them, whether it's for a bird or a tsunami, and hear them and attend to them. For narcissistic people, pulling them away from their phone or their social media scrolling or their TV watching or their video game playing or navel gazing or whatever the hell they're doing is pretty much impossible. I am not even going to give the cruel guidance of advising people to try the bird test with a narcissistic partner, because it'll be just one more hurtful reminder of how unattuned these relationships can be. But it's also a reminder of how engagement and attunement work and why they're so necessary in healthy relationships. A big part of healing from these relationships is to allow yourself to mine the beautiful moments around you and be present in them. And perhaps the grief is that this is a process, the enjoyment of the beautiful things of life, that you could not now or ever engage in with a narcissistic partner without being brushed off. And even if we take this out of the partner realm into your childhood with a narcissistic parent, for example, if that's relevant, think about that. Think about how children attempt to engage their parents into the ordinary, simple things. Look at the snowman I made. Look at the picture I drew. Look at the funny squirrel outside the window. And think about the sheer impossibility that a narcissistic parent would regularly break out of what they were doing to engage in that moment of attunement. And the stakes are a hell of a lot higher in childhood. Those misattunements, as they accumulate over time, result in a child not being able to develop a strong, subjective sense of self, may negatively impact their social development and leave them with a sense that they are not seeable or noticeable or worthy. One passing score on one day of the bird test, or frankly, one failing score on one day of the bird test, doesn't mean that your relationship is a winner or that your relationship is a disaster. Like all data, you need more than just one data point. If you caught the narcissistic person on a good day and they do notice the proverbial bird, but never do it again the next 50 times you attempt it, then be careful that you don't justify on the basis of that one attuned day, of that one noticed bird. And if you have a partner that 8 to 9 times out of 10 does stop and notice and attune and engage for small moments when you do make a so-called bid, and maybe once or twice may not be engaged because may not do it because they're engaged in some sort of demanding task again, then don't write your relationship off as unhealthy. But I can confidently say that the vast majority of narcissistic partners and frankly narcissistic people in your life will not pass the many bird tests over time. And to always remember That just because they're not attuning to you doesn't mean that you're not valuable, but because they will only attune to what works for them in any given moment. So all I can say is happy bird watching. Let's talk about the fart test. So forgive me my lack of grace, as well as my crudeness, and if this line of conversation offends you. But those of you listening know exactly what I am talking about. You're in a new relationship. You pay attention to how you look. You may not order garlic to keep you kissable. You keep things clean and orderly. In the beginning of a relationship, we are sort of the aspirational version of ourselves. And it kind of gets filed under making a good impression. You may even avoid eating beans and cabbage, right? Just want to be sort of that pristine person. And as the relationship continues, this is not sustainable. You might be able to do this for a few weeks, maybe even a few months. But you may not want to do full hair and makeup before they wake up, or just to go grocery shopping with them. Or when you finally spend the night, like I said, unless you crawl out of bed before they wake up and clean up and take a shower and brush your hair and do your hair and face, they're going to see the real you. I have even known people who avoid having full bodily functions and going elsewhere to do a so-called number 2 instead of doing it in this new person's home or apartment. And as time keeps going on, let's face it, folks, that day's going to come when you finally let one rip. Life happens, intestines do their thing, and try as you might, one sneaks out. Now, for some people, this is a moment of mortification, as though you now become human. It could be a moment of fear. They won't see me the same way again. The fart becomes a metaphor. The day this relationship goes out of the idealized, I always look this put together, to I have normal and not always charming bodily functions too. Maybe it's the day we don't or no longer feel like the idealized, love bombable person. Who knows why this is such a moment? Maybe because kids made fun of us when we were in school. Maybe because little kids spend so much time in trying to do tricks with their armpits and simulate that sound to tease. Maybe because farting is a sort of metaphor we associate with older folks who just don't have as much control of their bodies. Folks, thank goodness, my days of dating and all that are behind me permanently. I would probably fail the fart test the first time I got up from the table on a first date. And I'm using this, though, as a metaphor. That day of the fart, it's the day the relationship becomes human. And in a healthy relationship, this moment should be a nothing and would only become a something if we made it into a something. And while in a narcissistic relationship, it may not really be anything, but something about these relationships feels unstable and fragile. That one little toot can leave you feeling like you're puncturing a bubble, that you have taken the glitter out of the fairy tale. And there is somehow something nascent, quiet, and implied within the even relatively new narcissistic relationship, that this relationship only works if you are somehow not quite human, if you never got it wrong. And around the time of that first fart, as it were, is probably when this relationship is settling into a rhythm. Perhaps a little bit of the novelty is gone. You're relaxing, a few more movie nights at home, maybe opening up more, being more of yourself. In a healthy relationship, this is where you advance to the next meaningful level of intimacy. In an unhealthy relationship, this is where you may start to feel that your true self is a bit precarious. Narcissistic people maintain the fantasy that they are in fact, they need an ideal love story. It's really quite grandiose, which is why they often concern themselves with all the things that make relationships seem glittery, like perhaps having a higher status partner or getting into relationships quickly and impulsively. The excitement can also fuel the grandiosity, and they believe their own hype. This is a once in a lifetime, I have never felt this way about anyone's soulmate situation. Well, that's only going to last a minute until you're revealed to be a person with a gastrointestinal system and not a prop. A sort of slip, the almighty fart, like this, may even result in you feeling judged, ridiculed, laughed at. And while if it's good-natured ribbing, it can feel like a silly, fun moment, but there may be an edge, a sense of, ooh, now the blush is off the rose. I actually believe the first fart moment may be more momentous than your first kiss. Because that fart is a moment where both of you may recognize that the trueness and humanness of each of you is what makes you lovable. Not the aspirational you, not the dating profile you, not the grid photo you, not the photoshopped you, but the you. Listen, I'm not advocating for passing gas as a first date opener, but as time goes on and there are more real moments in the relationship, this is actually a good thing. It just probably doesn't feel that way in a narcissistic relationship because ultimately the proverbial red flags aren't that red or even that seeable. They are dozens of subtle things that you sort of feel in your body but try to wave away because the other stuff that might be happening in this new relationship sort of feels good and right. Whatever bodily function it is, throwing up, passing gas, a night spent in a bathroom after some bad fish, or just you being you, dealing with a messy family situation, maybe not knowing how something works or what it is. Maybe you don't know something about something fancy or elite or technical or even how to pronounce something. Maybe it's a quirky laugh or you snort laugh or spit while you talk. Something, anything that means you are no longer performatively perfect. Could that be enough to make a narcissistic person walk? You should be so lucky. True love is the person who listens to you fart and just draws you closer when it happens. The problem is the narcissistic person, when you start becoming the less and less perfect version of yourself, it's not as simple as I'm getting up and leaving. If it was, then be like, okay, well, that hurt, but at least you would have maybe saved yourself many, many years of, once you have that fall from grace, your supply, maybe not as interesting to them. And the relationship definitely segues away from the love bomb into the devalue. And there'll always be that sense of, well, maybe if I was more perfect, everything from whether that's never passing gas, to always looking perfect, to always getting everything perfect. You will destroy yourself in that pursuit, believing it's possible. Remember, whatever it is, farting the first time someone sees you without your makeup, you don't know how to pronounce the name of some fancy French wine, and that the other person doesn't make fun of you, doesn't laugh at you, but recognizes that you're a whole person and all of you, that essence of you is what's lovable. So folks, fart away might be the only way you're going to find true love. So here's a question for you. Have you ever had the experience with a narcissistic person that they consistently just don't answer a pointed question you ask them? Drop that one in the comments. I'm guessing we're going to see a lot of yeses because it's very much one of their gambits. They just don't answer the question. So let's break that down. Now listen, it's not, narcissistic people have not cornered the market on this, right? It isn't just them, let's be fair. Anyone who is passive aggressive or shifty or grifty, they don't answer the question either. But I got to tell you, it's definitely a classical part of the narcissistic ground game. And if you have ever spent many hours in a text battle with a narcissistic person, or even an in-person battle with someone with this kind of personality, it'll often keep coming back to this same issue. They don't answer the question. It's an interesting trick, a sort of a con, a grifty, slimy kind of trick, but it can be maddening and confusing unless you know it's happening. And then when you can see they are not answering the question, you can set a boundary and break out of the toxic cycle. So let's play it out. maybe in an intimate relationship. So let's play it out what it would look like in an intimate relationship. You say, hey, did you stay out late with that person from work? They say, what person? You say, come on, you know what person, that new person on your team, the one you just said like moved here from New York or someone? They say, oh, that person. You say, well, did you stay out late with them last night? They say, why are you asking this again and again? We have a major deadline coming up at work. It's all hands on deck. You ask, did you stay out late with them last night? They say, I am wiped out with these deadlines. I need a break. Maybe we can go to the beach this weekend. You say, oh my God, why can't you just answer a simple question? They say, I'm not answering a ridiculous question. On top of everything else I'm going through, I get to come home to this. Remember how you wanted us to be able to get that part of the house upgraded? You keep talking about it? Well, if we can get this deadline done and get the bonuses, I'll be able to get that done for the house. Can we just go to sleep? I am working like a crazy person for us, and yet I get to come home to interrogation just because you don't have enough going on. Did the question ever get answered? No, it didn't. Well, let me give you another example. Imagine this happening in a family. You say, hey, Ma, why did you ask my daughter about my work stuff? Why didn't you just come to me? Your parent says, what are you talking about? I don't know about any of your work stuff. You say, you asked Mary yesterday about my work stuff. I don't want my daughter in the middle. What did you want to know? Why did you approach her? Your parent says, don't be silly. Mary makes stuff up. She's dramatic. You say, I would prefer you didn't ask her these things. I just want to understand why you did it so we can avoid it in the future. Why did you ask her that? Your parent says, when did having a conversation become about asking? We were just talking about life. You're being ridiculous, and once again, you're trying to put a wedge between me and Mary. Did your question get answered? No, it did not. And I know many of you, listening to these scenarios I'm laying out to you, you're thinking, Dr. Ramani, there's a lot of gaslighting going on here. Yeah, there is. Not answering the question is, in fact, sort of a kind of a sub-form of gaslighting. Because the way the narcissistic person operates is not only to distract and deflect, but also to sometimes shift blame or paint you as being overly sensitive or dramatic. And in doing all that, then the question doesn't get answered, right? At the end of these two sort of sample conversations I gave you, not only did the people not get any resolution, the question didn't get answered, and they felt worse because in the case of the couple, the person asking the question about the inappropriate hours with the questionable work person, the person asking the questions was painted as demanding. The narcissistic person presented themselves as a hardworking martyr, and the person asking the question was almost blamed for that person working late. You wanted a kitchen and the price and blah, blah, blah. In the person talking with their parent, the parent, in essence, is accusing their adult child, asking the questions, of creating tension with the grandchild. And so after not having the question answered, which they didn't, not only are you still left without an answer, you are left filled with negative emotion. So you're now 0 for 2, and that's not a nice feeling. Their not answering the question goes back to something else I have brought up on this channel, which is the inability of narcissistic people to answer any question that begins with why. They don't know their why. Narcissistic people are notoriously disconnected from their motivations. I think most often because it would shame the hell out of them if they did dive in. So if that person said, yes, actually, I did go out with my young colleague because I'm insecure and attention-seeking, and I like the power I have because I'm the boss. Do you really think they're going to answer the why? Probably not. And because they have no empathy, they also won't come back with an answer that's kind, like, yes, I was out with her and with several other people from work, but I'm sorry. It was wrong of me to not call. I know the situation makes you uncomfortable. You've brought it up before, and I am so sorry. And then next time, they actually don't repeat the behavior. The person, using that example of the conversation with the parent, why did you do that, right? That's what you're asking. Is the parent really going to say, because I have no boundaries and I believe you as my child owe me something and I feel entitled to information about your life, and since you won't give it to me, I feel entitled to get it out of my granddaughter and I don't really care if it messes with my granddaughter's head. They're not going to say that. There will be no moment of the parent saying, oh, you're right, I shouldn't be doing that. There is no accountability in these relationships, and that's why they're so frustrating. Narcissistic people don't answer questions because they're not, partly, not entirely, partly because they're not self-aware, because they don't feel like they should have to, because they refuse to maintain a sense of behavioral accountability, because they're oppositional, and because they're entitled. You take all that, put that together, it's why you're often not able to get straight answer to questions, especially questions where the answer is shaming or uncomfortable. So how do narcissistic people avoid answering questions so well? Gaslighting, leaving you confused, stonewalling and just oppositionally refusing to answer a question, storming away, which is a form of stonewalling, and if you have any abandonment issues yourself, you may find yourself giving up on pursuing the question and trying to appease them to get them to come back. They may not answer the question by getting angry, and then you may give up on the question because you're afraid of their rage. These techniques avoid you from pushing for the answer. When you ask a question and it's not answered, then there's really no path forward. Listen, you can't conduct your life like you're living in a court of law or in a deposition where you can force someone to answer a question. And even if you do, you still won't get an answer, and 95% of the time, you'll end up gaslighted. So you wonder, is there any path forward? There really isn't one except radical acceptance. They are not going to answer the question. It opens up shame. Folks with these personalities lack self-awareness. And you won't get empathy even if they do answer the question. If you push them hard enough, and sometimes they do answer it, more often than not, the answer will hurt you. Many people feel as if they have lost their reality when they ask a narcissist a question. And they may destroy themselves in the pursuit of an answer. In many cases, especially cases when it may bring up their shame, I can promise you this, you ain't getting one. Drop in the comments, have any of you been successful in getting an honest answer out of a narcissistic person? Again, it's hard because they simply may not have that skill set of doing the deep dive and honestly reflecting on an answer. Ultimately, most of their psychological resource goes into impression management, how people view them. Keep that in mind and stop trying to chase down the answers to some of these questions. It's not comfortable. You're not likely to get them, and this could be why I'm telling you, in some ways, I think the entire private investigation industry is kept in business by people trying to get the answers they simply can't get out of narcissistic people in their lives. So let me put this one to you. Have any of you ever been in a narcissistic relationship where they blamed you for the inconvenience that was caused by your illness? Listen on, because we're going to take that on today. This is a tough one because if, you're thinking like, say what? Yeah, they'll blame you for the inconvenience you caused by getting sick. Thank you to the person who wrote in with this question because it really echoed something I've witnessed in multiple cases of narcissistic abuse, especially in longer term relationships. So I think it's an important one to take on, or it's a cautionary tale. So imagine the narcissistic person was inconvenienced by your cancer, or some other long-term illness, or your pregnancy, or your back surgery. And they have no problem telling you. The communication geniuses that they are, right? So they may say something to you like, hey, I just want you to know all that chemotherapy stuff you did and you losing your hair and having to drive you and sit in the hospital, having to deal with you. It was really inconvenient for me and darn insurance paperwork. Or they may something like, just so you are aware, it was really hard for me after your surgery. It totally threw off my schedule. And they say this with a straight face. How dare you inconvenience them with your hospitalization and your illness? I have actually seen it happen to people in my life in real time. And I remember feeling sick when I saw it happen. Not because I was surprised. The narcissists are going to invalidate. It's what they do. But because I knew how much it hurt the person who was sick and actually still held hope and believed that maybe their illness would be the wake-up call for the toxic person in their life. So you might be thinking, what the hell is this about? This almost feels sadistic. Well, just as a reminder, the only reality and experience in the world for them is theirs. So when something as real as your illness comes up, it is really experienced as an affront. How dare there be an experience that's not mine, and on top of that, one that's actually inconveniencing me. So when you are sick and other people are checking in to send you well wishes or maybe help or send some food or be supportive or just be kind, none of those calls are for the narcissistic person, are they? And even when those people call to talk with the narcissistic person, they may say things like, oh my goodness, your wife is so brave. Well, that's not going to work for the narcissistic person who views themselves almost delusionally as the only one who can be brave and good. Your illness may also be a grim reminder of their own mortality, or it may actually throw off their schedule. That's what happens. When you love or care, supposed to love or care someone who's sick, it does throw off your schedule. Plans may need to be canceled or rescheduled. Things may not happen as you thought. Your energy may wane, and because you are preoccupied, you may not be as good a source of supply. Basically, the rhythms of life change, and it's not because of them. And it may even be worse, that while you are ill, they may even accuse you of making it too big a deal. So they'll say, oh, please, it's just stage 3 cancer. At least it's not stage 4. Yeah. Or they'll say something like, oh, people have babies all the time. Or, is it really that bad? Do we really need to drive all the way to the emergency room right now? I'm finishing the game here. While you are in the midst of the illness, many times, obviously, you're so absorbed with it, especially if it is more acute, that you almost can't entertain the thought that they do not care. It's painful to think that someone may not care when you're in the most vulnerable spot of your life. And on top of that, you are just needing to survive. So maybe you actually do need their ride to the hospital or for them to help you up the stairs or whatever it may be. At those times, there may be cognitive dissonance for you, justification, and as I said, preoccupation with your own situation. So you just can't go there to a radical acceptance space of, wow, I actually think they're aggravated because I am sick. If all goes well, you come out of the medical crisis. In some cases, perhaps you'll be changed for your lifetime. Maybe you'll have issues with mobility or need ongoing therapies, or there's risks of relapse, but you do get better. You aren't so fragile. And that's usually when the narcissistic person will tell you something this insensitive. And no, you don't get to give them points for waiting until you weren't dying to give you this feedback and tell you that your illness inconvenienced them. What it means is that you actually did read the situation correctly in the first place. They really were annoyed when you were sick, as upsetting as that might seem. And now, in the aftermath of your illness, to hear them share with you that they were actually inconvenienced can also be unsettling. It's also possible that they will minimize it and say things like, well, it couldn't have been that bad, you're better, aren't you? And yet, having to have experienced a life-changing illness and have it be glossed over Again, so invalidating, so unempathic. For those of you who have endured an accident that required care afterwards, a difficult pregnancy, or frankly, any pregnancy or an illness, and to be viewed as an inconvenience, at a minimum, let this terrible experience be a wake-up call. So you've already been through this whole illness or this mess, right? But it's a grim reminder that if you do become ill again, your health struggles again, or you have a recurrence, that it will be, again, that you're going to hear that you're inconvenient again. So that means now, while you're well, make sure you get your plan Bs in place and stop waiting for the wondrous moment that the narcissist is going to roll up and help you. Illness is the ultimate test of a narcissistic relationship, and invariably they fail. Many people are devastated when they recognize that all the justifying and wishing it was different and the wishful thinking, it all becomes devastating when you become sick. And the willingness to just say that they were actually able to say out loud that they were inconvenienced by your illness speaks to the fact that relationships for narcissistic folks are really merely transactional and functional. The test of a relationship is not the love bombing or the charm or the charisma. It's really the test of any relationship, is whether they're willing to hold your hand when you're sick. And they view it as a privilege to be able to sit there and get you through it. That's a healthy relationship. Always remember that that's the measure of love. And even if your illness may have at times been called an inconvenience, as difficult things in life are, when you're sick or at any time, you're the last person in the world who should ever have had to hear that. And all of us deserve better. Thanks again.